Does your leadership strategy include the possibility of a no-win scenario? Are you teaching your new and upcoming leaders that there's a possibility they may run into a challenge where there's no way out? Back in early 2000, I was working for Intel Corporation, and my manager recommended me for a week-long intensive program called Managing Through People. Now, you had to be recommended by an upper division executive to take this week-long intensive class that was aimed at fast-track leaders, and I was honored to be nominated. We met at this beautiful resort in the high mountains of Oregon. It was Bigfoot country, and we started on a Sunday night at 6 p.m. At 6:01, if you entered, you were out of the program. So at 5:59, I noticed there's only 2 seats left in the entire room, and it's at my table. At 5:59, in walked 2 individuals, 2 guys. They were engineering managers, former F-16 pilots. And they took the last 2 seats at our table, so I knew I was in trouble. Because I was the only non-engineering manager in the whole program. Right away, they set up our first exercise. Your table is your team. You were in a plane crash. You only have a few handfuls of implements and hand tools to effect a rescue. You also have to come up with a plan to find food and water for everybody that's involved in the plane crash that survived. Fortunately, you all 6 survived. You have 20 minutes, go. That was it. Well, right away, Maverick and Goose put their heads together and started trying to work up with a solution with a few hand tools, a wrench and a mirror and some makeup that was, I don't know whether makeup would help them out, but they had makeup. And I noticed that after a couple of minutes, they're not engaging the rest of the team members. There were 3 ladies on the team in addition to the 2 guys and myself. And the ladies just sat back in the chair and resigned themselves to the fact that they're not going to be involved. And only the top percentage people that scored based on the evaluators would be recommended for promotions after this class. So I started looking around, and I noticed that all the other teams were fully engaged. All the team members were contributing to solving the problem. So after 20 minutes, the facilitators walked around, and they came to each table, and they asked, is everybody doing well? Have you figured it out? Well, we're running out of time. At the 20-minute time limit, the chief moderator said, okay, table 6, our table. What did you do to effect the rescue? And the 2 pilots put their heads together and they said, well, we tried to come up with this electronic device that would signal an SOS. However, we ran out of time. And they said, well, what did you do about food and water? And they said, well, we didn't get to that. I don't know what jumped into my head, but I decided to stand up and say, we solved the problem for food and water. And I pointed to the 3 ladies that were sitting at the table, and they looked at me incredulous like, what? So the moderator asked, well, how did you solve the food and water problem? This was my Kobayashi Maru incident from Star Trek. I know there's Star Trek people out here. Raise your hand. And those of you who don't follow Star Trek but are afraid to admit it, raise your hand. So we have a full group. This was my Kobayashi Maru incident, if you know Star Trek. It was where Captain James T. Kirk was faced with a no-win scenario. He did not believe in the no-win scenario. Neither did I. So when I was asked how we solved the problem with food and water, I said, well, you didn't tell us what desert we crashed in. I chose the high desert of the western United States. You didn't tell us what time of year the crash took place. I chose the spring, so we had plenty of meltwater for fresh water. And also, since we're in the high desert of western United States, we had plentiful game, rabbits and birds and whatever we needed. Then the moderator asked, but what would you do if game weren't plentiful? Now my brain started, fortunately my mouth engaged before my brain did. And I said, well, we'd eat the sandwiches there. Dead silence in the room for 5 seconds. And then I went, we would eat the sand, comma, which is there. Still crickets. And then a guy in the back went, oh my God, that's the best answer. He started applauding. Then finally the answer spread out through the whole place. And 150 people are in hilarious laughter and applauding. our table got the award for the best original solution to the problem, to a problem that had no solution, because it was aimed at seeing which tables would engage all the members of the team. Now, my wife had the perfect response when I came back from the training. I related the story to her, and she said, I had an easier solution. You could have eliminated the engineers and eaten them. Which was a plausible solution. But the problem is, occasionally as leaders, you're faced with what seems to be perhaps a no-win scenario, where the outcome is not apparent. It looks like there's no way out. We tend to run to the tried and true, off the shelf, been there, done that, repackaged, repurposed leadership training that everyone has had. At times you have to go outside that box to look for the response to the no-win scenario. You have to change the rules of the game in order to find a solution to that issue. It involves a pattern interrupt. It involves vision shifting. It involves understanding that the inner game drives the success of the outer game and vice versa.